Hello, and welcome back to Play of the Game, the limited podcast where we actually play the games. So just as a reminder for anyone who might be new, the way we usually do this is we link out to usually going to be a 17 lands link in the podcast description. And especially if you're listening on audio, we do have YouTube video form available. And Spotify, I think, also has a video player. But, if you're planning on listening to this as a podcast rather than a video, we highly recommend you follow the link in the description, go absorb the gameplay spot that we're talking about, just see what's the board state, what's the hand, what is the opponent doing, that kind of thing, and then come back and listen to it in audio form. That's always there if you want to go back and reference, like, what are they talking about, if, you get confused or lose some details. But the goal is to have this digestible in pure audio form, as long as you download the spot kind of before you start listening. All right, so this week we have a return appearance of Ethan Sachs of Lords of Limited podcast fame. Great podcast, shout out. However, this time it's not as hero guest spot where we're analyzing one of Ethan's games, but as villain. So this is a game that I played against Ethan in the Arena Championship limited qualifier a couple weekends ago. I had a really good deck. I was very much trying to make it to draft 2 with this deck because it was one of the stronger decks I had drafted. And I paired against Ethan, which, big gulp, another really, really excellent limited player. Do not want to pair against him, but it is how it is, and we have to go try to kill a friend here. So, Jason, do you want to break down this spot for us that involves some Spider-Man pointing at the other Spider-Man memes?
Yeah, so this is our turn 3. We're on the play. Notably, usually we depict these spots with already having played our land in our first main phase, but this time we haven't, somewhat due to the fact that we could theoretically discard this land to the Iron Shield Elf we have in play. Spoilers. But we're almost certainly not doing that, so realistically, we currently have a swamp and a forest in play, and we're about to play our third forest. Those are the only lands we have in play or in hand, so we don't have our fourth land. But we haven't missed any land drops. This is just our turn 3. Neither player has mulliganed, and both players just have one creature on the battlefield, an Iron Shield Elf each, aforementioned Spider-Man pointing memes. Ethan, Lord Tupperware, also has 2 swamps in play as the only lands. So it's possible he's missing a second color. It's possible he's just not showing the second color. Regardless, both players kept. His hand is probably somewhat functional. Maybe that functionality is just based on the Iron Shield Elf. Notably, if you've been keeping track at home, what neither player mulliganing means is that after playing our land, we'll have 5 cards in hand, and Ethan will have 6 cards in his hand. And so, okay, there's going to be a little bit of a 2-part process to this episode. First of all, we're going to go over some things, ignoring one specific card in our hand that might make things different. When referring to this card in our hand, I'll call it the mystery card that will help us later. And then after that, we'll talk about the mystery card. But right now, our 5 cards, other than our land, consist of a Dream Caesar. That's the 3/2 flyer that you can blight 1 when it enters to make your opponent discard a card. A Gilt Leaf's Embrace. That's the +2/+0 trample indestructible for this turn. Aura. I believe it gives trample indestructible for only 1 turn, and then after that, the +2/+0 still sticks around.
Yep. That would be crazy if it continued to give trample and indestructible for the rest of the game.
Well, you can imagine it continuing to give trample.
Yes, I definitely could.
Then was Kinsbale Outrider or something? A Bristlebane Outrider. The 4-mana 3/5 Kithkin that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and it's a 5/5 if as long as another creature is entered under your control this turn. And then we have our punch spell, Assert Perfection, 2 mana, give something +1/+0 and have it punch something. And then finally we have our mystery card that will help us later. Don't worry about it for now. I guess this is a little spoiled on video, but so the first thing that we wanted to talk about is how do we play this Iron Shield Elf minigame?
Yeah, it's a really weird mini game that involves a lot of face up information on our side and a lot of face down information in terms of our opponent's hand, and the inverse for them, obviously. It's so interesting. This is the kind of Magic decision where it's both sort of possible to figure out what your philosophy on it might be, and impossible to figure out like how all of the branching combinations of decisions actually end up playing out. So how should we be thinking about this Iron Shield Elf game? And obviously the just to like kind of spell it out for people, when these Iron Shield Elves entangle in combat, there's going to be a dance where one player chooses to discard a card, and the other player is probably forced into roughly like discarding a card to kind of keep their elf around and make them, bounce off of each other. And you're kind of just continuing to say, I would like to bring us both down one chosen card in hand. Like, we both get to go down a resource, but it's a resource of our choice. And the idea is that if this continues to happen long enough, you will create a kind of weird small game. But at any given point, it's very hard for a player to decline that option, because then they're basically giving up their elf for just like a random card out of your hand, which basically means you spent 0 mana to use that card as a removal spell on the elf, which is generally a pretty good exchange. So we could kind of start this minigame by attacking. We could try to decline the minigame by not attacking and then maybe not even blocking if they attack. We could do many other things. How would you be thinking about this?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So first of all, there's one other part of the mini game, which is if you attack, or like if these elves get into combat, the attacker can choose to not discard a card, and then if the blocker also chooses to not discard a card, then the elves will trade. But if the blocker then decides to discard a card, the attacker can then choose to discard a card as well.
It's this sort of asymmetric thing where like both players have the option to kind of make the weird minigame thing happen, and it's pretty disincentivized for either player to like end up declining it once the first player starts it.
Yeah, but okay, so here's some things, right? To think about this minigame, right? So if you just buy into this minigame of like, okay, we're both discarding cards, and like each time we both discard one card, so you're just like literally trading card for card. One way to think about it is, well, whose cards are better, right? Like, for example, like one easy example, reading off of the only 2 swamps in play, maybe Ethan here has like cards of a different color that he can't cast, right? Then he's probably very happy to get rid of those cards, just like use those cards in some way by discarding them to the Iron Shield Elf. And we have no idea of, like, we have no way of like intuiting this, right? Yeah. On the other hand, if we look at our hand, we can see like, well, okay, none of our cards actually do anything in this exact moment, right? Like, our removal spell doesn't work. Like, our removal spell just trades for one of Ethan's cards. Our like Guilt Leaf's Embrace like just tramples over for some damage, and similarly trades for one of Ethan's cards theoretically. Like, assuming the elves get in combat. Our 4-drops like can't be cast until we draw a land. So like, maybe our cards aren't that valuable either, but like, is Ethan likely to have a less valuable card than the cards that we currently have? It's
Who
kind of
freaking
unclear.
knows? Yeah, it's so hard to figure out.
Yeah.
I agree that like there's the factor of only 2 swamps. Maybe the opponent is like color screwed in some way, but that lets them use their cards of the off color to basically have an immediate impact on the board. There's also the factor maybe of like, when the opponent is color screwed, they have less information about whether or not they're going to draw that color soon, and so they might be more incentivized to get rid of powerful cards of that color if they're doing this, and that could end up being punishing. You're kind of forcing them to make a decision on how they want to use these cards before they have all of the information about whether they're going to have access to them in the game. That's just like one very small argument against the like, it's actually bad if they're able to discard cards that they can't cast yet thing. But I think it probably isn't outweighed by just like the immediate option that they get of like, they'll probably make a good decision, given that we should assume our opponent is relatively good at making decisions if we're trying to win high-level games of Magic. And even though that's a difficult decision for them, we should assume that they will like make it with a good balancing of risk reward, and so it won't end up being that important for us.
Yeah. The dynamic you're describing is much more talking about like it is better to force them to make that decision sooner rather than later.
Right.
Um,
So if we
like,
kind of on the balance of things decide like we do want to enter into this mini game, we should probably do that now, just because like we're kind of restricting the opponent's information they have on which cards they're going to discard, assuming we have a good like grasp of which cards can we afford to give up and which cards maybe do we not want to.
Yeah.
Do we? That's the other question. Like, how are you ordering our hand right now in terms of cards that we'd be willing to get rid of and like not use this game?
So, I mean, obviously, there's the mystery card that will help us later, which we dare not now speak of. But I mean, the rest of our hand is like pretty reasonable in that, like, okay, so another factor in this whole mini game is how valuable really is this our like is each person's Iron Shield Elf, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing that's like very important to think of, right? Because obviously on this board right now, both the Iron Shield Elves like dominate it in some sense, in that they are the most important things on this board. They're the only things on this board.
Yeah.
But like, you know, say we draw our fourth land and cast our 3/5. Suddenly our opponent's Iron Shield Elf doesn't do very much, right? So like if we like cast our 3/5 and then like later attack with our Iron Shield Elf into their Iron Shield Elf, like, is it going to be that like they're not gonna like put that much stock into keeping their Iron Shield Elf around while they can't deal with our 3/5 probably, right? Because like it's not gonna help that much against our 3/5. The best it can do is like block and like save itself by discarding a card. But meanwhile, like our Iron Shield Elf will still be threatening if all they have are like 3 toughness or less creatures, right? Our Iron Shield Elf will, in that case, like still threaten to like be getting value. The other question is like, who benefits more from a small game? Do our cards play well in this small game? I mean, 5/5s and 3/2 flyers do kind of play well in the small game, so like that like maybe pushes us towards discarding cards to like forcing both players to discard cards. But yeah, it's an interesting question. In general, how I would look at this hand, like I really like the 3/5 certainly, because you know it helps invalidate their Iron Shield Elf, and I do like the flyer as well for being able to play in this small game. Like if we were trying to like discard cards to like to push towards this small game, I do like both of our creatures because they play well in that small game.
Yeah.
And then between the other 2 known cards, ignoring the one that will help us later, I would generally say that the removal spell is probably going to be a little more valuable to keep around than the like combat trick indestructible spell, and like our current main threat can get indestructible anyways, right?
I agree with that. I agree with basically all of this. I guess there's like 2 other very small factors I kind of want to note, right? I think one was already noted way at the beginning. Ethan was on the draw, so he has access to 1 more card than us, like in half the turns of this game. He's like half a card ahead, roughly. That does matter for this mini game of trying to create small games. Like the smaller we make the game, the more impactful it is that Ethan is on the draw. And then the other thing is just that like Dream Caesar lets us invert that, right? It lets us go up a card instead of being down half a card. That's relevant, although it's kind of interesting because like we want to play probably Outrider first just because it's a larger threat. It will attack for 5 if we cast a Dream Caesar the following turn, and like in that way Dream Caesar is sort of a card that we can only utilize in a big game, at least a game that's a little big. Like we can't totally just discard and continue making these exchanges turn after turn after turn and then like plan on casting both Outrider and Dream Caesar in time. So there's that element to it, but I wanted to note also that like Dream Caesar is a card that kind of helps us swing a small game because it is a 2-for-1. Yeah.
Yeah, so like here's the thing, right? Where an important thing to ask, like, and this gets back to the question of like, how good are your cards, and like how good do you think that compares to your opponent's cards, right? Um, and if we just like look at all the cards in our hand, like we kind of only have one card, plus the card that we'll get to later, that we don't have an immediate that we don't like have a desire to cast, right? Like all of our cards feel like they're gonna like trade for something meaningful already, and like trading them for just one card from our opponent doesn't seem like obviously a good trade, right, for most of them.
Agreed.
And it's not like, and we're also like looking to draw a fourth land and play that fourth land. Maybe we can stop at 4, but like it's not obvious that like we would want to like discard that many more like that many lands that we draw because our next one is useful. So like it might be kind of hard to like keep feeding this elf, right? Like
Yeah, it's costly. At
we
the
might be
very
giving up
least.
quite a lot if we're like continuing to feed this elf.
Yeah, I think that's right. However, declining to continue to feed the elf sort of translates to not using it on the board for a couple turns, or at least like, not. I mean, if they attack us, we could take it. Then let's say they
It's
play
just,
a creature
yeah, you
that
can
can't
just take
block
3
it. Like,
damage.
yeah, that's fine. And
Like,
then if they don't attack us, then we've used our elf to make them not attack us, which is a use of the elf that counts.
yeah. Like one dynamic that the elf has definitely is it means that it is hard to attack with ground creatures with ground creatures that have toughness 3 or less, right? Because your opponent can just like turn a card into a removal spell for that creature, right?
Yeah. A 0-mana removal spell. That is why the elf is inherently powerful. It turns cards into 0-mana removal spells, which is a very powerful thing for a card to do.
And it's somewhat hard to block. But like we have a way to block their elf, so we like maybe can just let them attack us for 3. And like we don't have any like 3 toughness creatures that we want to attack with on the ground, so like maybe we don't care about their elf very much. So like we can just like not engage in this mini game, I think, pretty coherently.
Yeah, that is certainly a pretty good argument. I think it's very close to the argument I'm kind of wanting to lean towards. Is just like, let's try to decline and continue to play a normal game. Our cards seem pretty good in a normal game of Magic, and like we have a good chance. There's one other thing that like I kind of wanted to mention, going back to, let's say we do engage in this mini game, right? Which is, we kind of had concluded that like this Guilt Leaf's Embrace may be the worst card in our hand, so that would be the card we would want to discard to the elf, except casting it is kind of strictly better than discarding it. And so if we want to do that, then probably our plan is attack, cast Guilt Leaf's Embrace proactively, take a card out of their hand, make a 5/1 elf, and, basically it's the equivalent of discarding it, but we get to like put it on our creature for free.
Yeah, yeah. That's a pretty big thing to bring up, where we both trample over for 4 damage this turn, so it's like we made that card trade, except we also got 4 damage out of it, and our elf is now a 5/1, which is like quite good.
Yes.
It makes it harder for them to invalidate our elf. Of course, it still would die to like a Blight Rot or like it is some other
Embrace.
kind of
There's like a good amount of black removal in this format that doesn't actually just say destroy, so it's not really easy to say that it would be sticking around, but certainly a 5/1 Iron Shield elf is a much bigger problem than a 3/1 Iron Shield elf. For example, it would be harder for us to deal with given our 3/5 situation going on.
Yeah.
So where are we leaning in terms of engage, disengage? What are we trying to do this game? It's really like on a knife's edge.
So like I do really like the play of making the elf like just getting playing the Embrace to like make the elf a 5/1 and getting 4 damage this turn. If we didn't have the Embrace, or like if we had something else to cast for 3 mana, so that like casting the Embrace wasn't like literally free here, pending considering the secret card. If we didn't have that, then I kind of just wouldn't want to attack. Would just like want to like keep this Embrace as like something to like just discard to this elf at some point, and just like wait a little bit and not engage in this game, because I think it's a game that we don't obviously want to play where we like we don't want the game to shrink just yet. We want it to shrink later and not now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I will also note that attacking first technically is a little disadvantageous because like if you like for example if assuming that the Guilt Leaf Embrace was just a blank card, right? If you attacked first and you didn't have this way to like push more damage, then and then you go discard, your opponent goes discard, then they get to attack you for like actually attack you for 3 next turn. And like once the elves are tapped, right? Like you can now then like the next person can just start a cycle of trading 3 damage for 3 damage, and they will the person who attacks first will be 3 damage behind.
Yeah, basically whoever like says stop, I don't want to continue trading 3 for 3 has already taken 3 at any point in this cycle, basically. Yeah. Okay. Is it time to talk about the mystery card?
Yes, I think it is. So the mystery card here is what's it called? Barbed Bloodletter?
Barbed Bloodletter. This has been one that I have kind of been moving up in my estimations, especially in black-green decks. Especially over the course of the qualifier weekend. I just found that it ended up really strong in a lot of spots, and it's not clearly strong in this spot, but it has some interesting properties that we need to talk about.
Yeah, so Barbed Bloodletter is the equipment that auto attaches when you flash it in. It has flash for 1 in a block. It gives +1/+2. It has equip for 2. And notably, the first turn it enters, it gives the creature that it attaches to Wither, which means that it deals damage in -1/-1 counters instead of actual damage.
A throwback to original Lorwyn. Or Shadowmoor, I guess, technically.
Well, one thing that you might know about Wither and -1/-1 counters is that -1/-1 counters get around indestructible.
They do. So, the conclusion from this is that if we deal damage to the Iron Shield Elf, and that damage is Wither damage, it will die. Good to know.
Even if they discard a card.
Even if they discard a card. Right, that's the important thing. But it's also true that, like, casting this Bloodletter is not actually going to save our own elf, so we'd really be needing to use 2 cards to get into this. We'd have to, I guess the play would be attack, they block, we discard. Now here's the interesting thing. Do we discard Guilt Leaf's Embrace?
Well, so here's the thing. What you would do is you would not play your 3rd land first, and then so you would just because if you're never planning on playing Guilt Leaf's Embrace, you're never punished for that. So you attack, they block, you discard Guilt Leaf's Embrace with only 2 lands in play to bluff like, oh, the reason why I'm not playing this is because I only have 2 lands and I don't have my 3rd land yet. That's
a very important part of executing this line, actually, because play land attack, discard Guilt Leaf's Embrace is pretty bad if your opponent is able to pause and be like, why did they do that? They could probably put together, you have something like a Blight Rot or, a Bloodletter or something, and that might make them decline. I mean, maybe they wouldn't decline anyway because it's just
the decline isn't even that bad for you. But yeah.
Right. So maybe they wouldn't decline even.
It doesn't matter that much.
But yeah. Anyway, so to fully flesh out the line would be don't play 3rd land. Just to mask, it's free to mask not like having a 3rd land here. Attack, they block, we discard Guilt Leaf's Embrace, they discard card, and then we cast Bloodletter as basically a 2-mana unconditionally remove your elf, keep our elf around. It is now a 4/3, which is somewhat more annoying to deal with. And our hand left is Assert Perfection, our 2 4-drops, our land, which we can play post-combat. So we are kind of setting up such that we have a big elf that they need to deal with, and at any point if we draw a land, we will be able to start casting 4-drops and maybe pull ahead. And if they remove our elf, then maybe we do stuff with the 4-drops. If they just play a creature, they can't really block. Things are starting to go well. We also have this Assert Perfection in case the creature they play is really good and we just want to get it off the board.
Yeah, so basically what we're doing by casting the Bloodletter is saying, like, we are casting the Bloodletter as removal spell for your elf, right? Like, once we attack and if we attack and we get into the position where they are blocking, then we discard a card, and now they have the choice of, okay, they can let us have discarded a card as a removal spell for their elf. They can accept that. If they do, sure, that seems like pretty decent for us. We traded a card for their elf, or they can discard a card. After they discard a card, then now we have both discard one card, and we can then play the Bloodleather as. In addition to that, we are killing your elf. Like, we have traded one. We have each traded a card, and then now we are trading
basically
Bloodleather for elf.
Yeah, it's a 2-for-2 where one of the cards we're getting is their elf, which is forcing us into this mini game that we have probably concluded we don't particularly enjoy. The interesting part of that is, like, we're kind of half playing the mini game already by trading 2-for-2, but maybe that's fine. It gets a little bit hairy if, like, our opponent untaps, Blight Rots our elf, so they had, like, a clean answer for it, and then we, like, don't draw our fourth land, and so we put all of those cards into this, like, check move that ended up getting them, it was easily able to be escaped by them. That could be a problem.
Well, I mean, in that case, like, if they have Blight Rot, no matter what, we're, like, not very happy. Yeah. And if they have Blight Rot, I think we're pretty happy to have been able to turn trade the Bloodleather for their elf.
That is fair.
So,
yeah, that's true. It's could it actually be better for us? Maybe not.
I think basically the question that you're essentially asking for, like, should I make this play, is, are you happy to trade the Bloodleather for the elf?
And I think with that framing, the answer is, like, yeah, you really are. And it's not even the full Bloodletter.
Probably.
Right?
Like, their elf... First of all, I will say, we were talking about how we could theoretically in the future invalidate their elf. So maybe we aren't.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a ways away, and we don't... If they're attacking with it, are we blocking? Like, probably not. I mean, we could also think about block Bloodletter.
That is much more dangerous, because they could have things.
This is true. Then. Yeah, that is very true. So that's probably a no-go, just because of the existence of Blight Rot. Okay,
the final thing to think about is kind of like, are you happy with the situation where you attack and they don't block? And probably we're fine with it.
Yeah, I think that I think we're pretty fine with. We have a lot of tools that are good in a race. Well, I mean, the other thing to think about, I guess, is, like, what about just, like, pass? And then if they attack us, we take it? And then, like, we kind of try to ignore their elf. Like, they play a creature, right? We, like, assert perfection, attack, and we're just, like, we're doing 3-for-3 damage trades. They started, but, like, maybe we're okay with that because our hand is good in this kind of situation. Like, we can kind of continue to make it so that their only attacks, their only board presence is the elf attacking us back. Maybe we resolve a Guiltleaf's Embrace where we can get through a really large elf and it starts to win the race against the other elf. That is a path we could try to go down, right? What do you think about that path?
Is it's not clear what use the Bloodleather has in that situation. Like, this might be the best use of the card Bard the Bloodleather anyways.
That's true, but I mean, I would maybe argue that is the better way to, like, craft a game around our hand, right? Like, our hand is typically, it seems like a hand that is good in the, like, I play a creature, you play a creature, we're both attacking each other. At some point, I can use tricks to, like, trade for your creatures with a little bit of tempo bonus.
Well, okay, I mean, in the other world where we're trading, like, Embrace for a card and then Bloodletter for their elf, isn't that just, like, better for us then?
Yeah.
Because now we're attacking with a 4/3 as well.
Yeah, it's, like, maybe worse if they can remove the elf, but I'm trying to think about what that other situation looks like if they remove the elf.
Yeah, like, if we're just, like, not doing anything and they remove the elf, that's, like, really bad for us, right?
So, like,
because suddenly you're saying that
yeah, I mean, you're saying that, like, we do nothing, they attack us, we take it, then they just cast Blight Rot on elf. For some reason, my instinct is telling me, like, they would probably just play a creature instead of casting the Blight Rot. I don't know why that is particularly. I guess it would feel like they got in damage and they're continuing to develop their board and they can use the Blight Rot to answer the elf eventually anyway, would be kind of my instinct on it. I don't know. Does that make any sense? Like, I kind of feel like it... is more coherent
the
for them
blight
as a
rot
play.
will be bad for us at some point, anyways. Like,
Yes,
I think
that is
basically
true.
like I think you're overly focusing on like, oh, blight rot is a quote punish for this like line where we're like using
It's just a
bloodletter to
punish
trade
for
their
any
elf.
line because it's good against elf, and we're gonna be
Yeah,
relying on this elf in most worlds, kind of thing.
it's not like it's not really a punish, right? Because it's not at all. It's not really related to like using our bloodletter to trade for their elf, right?
We've
It's
just
not
used
related
our
to
cards
that,
to trade for their elf, basically. Yeah.
yeah. Like fundamentally, the thing that we're doing when we make this attack is saying, A, we are fine if they don't block and we trade 3 for 3, and B, we are like fine with if we either get to trade Embrace for their elf or we get to trade Embrace plus Bloodletter for their card plus their elf, right? And like them having a Blight Rot, I don't think, or like a removal spell doesn't really factor into this. I think that's just a good trade in like all worlds.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think that's
Like,
right.
Like the only times where you would posit that isn't a good trade is if you think that you can do like something better with your bloodleather and your embrace, and also invalidate this Iron Shield elf in a different way, but that seems hard and out of reach uh for us right now.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Okay, so the play we're landing on, I think, is the use the bloodletter to answer their elf this turn if they block, which they probably will. I mean, not guaranteed, but
Yeah. It is a nice this is a nice like technical rules play moment where like you have to realize bloodletter gets around indestructible, which is not like a trivial thing to realize, especially since it's not a widely played card, and there's not that many indestructible things. B, the exact sequence that you're supposed to take to like make it not a like not a like 1 for 2 trade, like you can't just go like if you attack and then just play bloodletter before as the first thing, then like they can just decline to discard, and then you need to discard anyways. So you have to like bait their discard by discarding first.
Yeah.
In order to make use of the bloodletter.
It's very important to do that. You can't just be like, "Ha, I have the card that actually kills your elf no matter what happens." Then they're like, "Okay, so discard your card or lose your elf." Like, yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah. Okay, that's what we're landing on. The play, let's I think we're at the point of the episode where we can look at the play I made. I just did the Guiltleaf's Embrace, cast it, get in 4 damage, make a 5/1 elf play. And they, kept their elf around. Ethan kept his elf around, I should say. We know the opponent here. Played a Voracious Tome Skimmer the next turn, which was a card that I felt deserved an Assert Perfection, especially if we're seeming to be playing into this mini game where cards very much matter. So we did that. We attacked. We made another exchange where we discarded the Bloodletter. So we're kind of giving up at this point on being able to get out of this mini game. Which, we have 3 cards. Opponent has 4 cards. If we draw a land, we can Dream Caesar. But still, we're kind of committing to this pretty long term. So they discard. Ethan discards, goes to 3 cards. Doesn't play a 4th land. So now on, like, just black lands and no 4th land. So we imagine that there's there's probably stranded cards in hand. There could still be a Blight Rot. There hasn't really been an opportunity to cast it. We play this 3/1, which I think I was just trying to dig to a land so that I could Dream Caesar. And then the play I made here I think is pretty inexcusable and just like lost us the game, where I just attacked because I wasn't thinking very hard about Blight Rot, and I discarded because I was thinking it's fine, I can continue playing this small game. This 5/1 elf is just going to be really hard to deal with in such a small game. And I got blown out with the Blight Rot and ended up losing a pretty long game where that value is just almost impossible to come back from. We can kind of skip ahead if people want to take a look, although they can also just skip ahead in their own replays for that. So yeah. Interesting, very interesting spot.
It kind of looks like you mostly lost to like, trying to play this small game too much when you weren't like actually that well equipped to play.
Yes, I think that is the right framing for it, and it's just like really interesting to be able to figure that out and figure out how we should have seen that ahead of time by like analyzing our hand on this turn 2 and figuring out, is this a hand that's coherently enough constructed to play this small game, or do we want to try to decline it and get out of it in some way? I think that's really the framing for the episode, is like, how do you think about whether this is a mini game that is beneficial for you to play? Because the margins are very slim and you don't know your opponent's hand. You can play it and it's not horrible. You have some tools that are pretty useful, but you have to assume that Ethan is also going to have some tools that are pretty useful in this kind of small game. And so, yeah, the question of like, is it responsible to just kind of enter into it willy-nilly is a very interesting one. And I think that the conclusion here is no, we should not have engaged. We should have figured out a way to be able to play a more normal game of Magic by trading our cards 2 for 2, having an Iron Shield elf, having Ethan not have an elf, and that giving us somewhat of a meaningful like advantage in the game that would have to be overcome by something like a Blight Rot, and then we could continue to play normal Magic. Any other final thoughts?
Nope, that summarizes basically everything.
Perfect. All right. Sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for taking a listen to this one. You can find me at patreon.com/Ryan C MTG or over at Blue Sky at r-condon.bsky.social. How about you, Jason?
JasonILTG basically everywhere. Sub to this one Patreon.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks everyone. And until next time, go out and make some good plays.